Welcome to the program. Hello, I'm your host, Ron Whitlock. The International Boundary and Water Commission, IBWC's U.S. Commissioner, Carlos Marin, died in a plane crash in Mexico on September the 15th, 2008. He died along with the Mexican Commissioner, Arturo Herrera Solis. The focus of today's program is going to be on the unique binational agency called the International Boundary and Water Commission that these two men headed. It means so much to the U.S.-Mexican border, all the way from Brownsville, Texas, Matamoros, Mexico, to San Diego, California, and Tijuana, Mexico. Due to the testament of the friendship of the U.S. and Mexican people, these two men died protecting us all, because floodwaters are very, very important. We're also going to talk about, in the next segment, so stay tuned, why were they flying a rented, chartered, fixed-wing aircraft rather than a U.S. helicopter, and is that important that they be given the capability of flying, let's say, Border Patrol helicopters rather than renting planes as they did before their death while doing their jobs. Our guest in the studio, Dr. Joe Coulter, who is president of the Lower Rio Grande Water Committee Incorporated. Dr. Joe, welcome. And Joe Tucker, who is project manager, retired. He served for a 9-year period as head of the IBWC's Mercedes field office. Joe, thank you for being with us. Last time you were on the program, Joe Tucker was with Commissioner Carlos Marin.
Right.
And to give you a little bit of a feel for who we're talking about, we're going to run briefly now just a little portion of Carlos Marin, Commissioner, during that particular program which we had with Joe Tucker. What should constituents and residents and business people all up and down the Rio Grande be thinking if they see the Mississippi going out of its banks and the levees breaking?
On behalf of the IBWC, again, we're trying to take every action possible to, of course, prevent that. In our levee rehab, we're doing the geotechnical work to make sure that we don't have weak spots. And that's where, you know, the levee breaks occur, where there's maybe a pocket of sand or silt as a core of that levee and so forth. And at the same time, we're raising the levees to the proper elevation that we can, let's say, hydraulically determine it's a 100-year. Of course, you know, this is a 100-year flood. If we get anything greater than that, then we have a different situation. But we still have 3 feet of freeboard. That's the requirement that we put in on our construction we have. But of course, again, it's Mother Nature who dictates what else is coming down the system or how much water is deposited, and that may change, and it might not be sufficient to protect. The levee failure this morning that I saw on TV was basically a weak spot. The levee started deteriorating at that point, and it opened up a hole in the levee itself. I think for the most part it was working okay, but that one spot, you know, makes a difference. And so that's what we're trying to look at and prevent, that make sure we don't have any weak spots in the levee itself.
Joe, how does it make you feel to see Carlos Berman just a few short weeks ago appearing with you and I on this program, and now to know that he has given his life serving the people of the United States during a flooding condition out in the Big Bend area?
Well, it's just about like losing a member of your family, because he was very important to the Boundary Commission. Of course, the Boundary Commission is very important to the Valley. He was a good man and will be sorely missed.
Now, Dr. Joe, you dealt with Commissioner Marin as deputy, as principal engineer, and then finally in the latter stages of his career as commissioner.
It was about a 10-year period that we were in contact with each other, usually half a dozen, 10 times a year, to talk about issues related to the valley and the water issues and El Morillo drain and the flood control problems. And so it was a very harmonious and I thought productive relationship we had.
Now, the plane went down and was reported missing on Monday the 15th until it was found by MDT searchers, Border Patrol, from what I understand, 23 miles northwest of Presidio. inside the country of Mexico, 13 miles from the Rio Grande in Mexico, when the bodies of all on board were found. One of the comments that took my attention was that of Roberta Jacobson, who is with the State Department, who worked with him on a regular basis because she is the Assistant Secretary for Western Hemispheric Affairs there in Washington. And her comment was, "We will greatly miss Carlos Marin's expertise and his gentle, good humor." That struck me because you never see a picture, you never met Carlos Marin that he didn't have that smile.
Carlos would smile even if he had absolutely nothing to smile about.
That's right. He always had a smile on his face.
Even when he was fussing at you for something you weren't doing right?
He had the reason he was so competent is that he had spent so much time working in that agency that when he finally rose to the top, he knew everything there was to know about how it would work and why it didn't work, and he proceeded in a very methodical way to fix it. And that's to his credit. And as I told Sally Spinner, the public relations officer over there, that the next commissioner, whoever he or she may be, is going to be measured by the standards that he set, that Carlos set.
And that basically, to a big degree, is his personal demeanor. That's what
right.
Saying.
He set the standard.
Now, you dealt with other commissioners in the past,
right,
going back to the one who was a former Army colonel of the Army Corps of Engineers, who was appointed, believe it or not, by General Dwight David Eisenhower when he occupied the White House. Tell us about an inspection at your office when he was commissioner as opposed to Carlos Marin.
Well, that was when I first started in the Harlingen office in 1954, and I was just a flunky, an engineer in the engineering office. And I can remember Hewitt coming down and walking down the hall and with his finger checking the tops of the windowsills for dust. And, you know, to this day, that's really the only thing I remember about the man.
Talking about Carlos Marin's smile, we're going to put up on the screen now for the audience a picture of a signing of both commissioners, Commissioner Carlos Marin and Commissioner Arturo Herrera of the Mexican section, both at the signing of the Donna Rio Bravo International Bridge Agreement, that happening in August of 2008. And you can see that broad smile of Carlos Marin sitting there smiling, signing that minute order for a new international bridge. One of the most recent things that happened in the city of El Paso in particular was a flood on August the 1st, 2006, right after Carlos Marin became commissioner of this international agency. Predominantly the west side of El Paso was flooded very severely, and at a minute order signed in the picture you're now seeing with Commissioner Arturo Herrera, this one happening in the actual commission's office there at IBWC headquarters in El Paso. They're signing minute order 313 in particular that causes sediment to be removed from the river of the Rio Grande, because they know that if they remove the sediment in the Rio Grande going through El Paso, then the capacity of the Rio Grande to handle flood waters is going to be improved. Isn't that great? Wouldn't that be good if that also could be done downriver in Laredo and in South Texas?
In the El Paso area, that's an annual maintenance job, is cleaning sediment out of the river. Of course, the channel is small there, very small compared to down here.
Why were they on a fixed-wing aircraft, which they rented, as opposed to one that their agency might own, or a helicopter owned by the Border Patrol or some other agency? That's our question we're going to start off. You can see on your screen that the agency that these gentlemen represented at the time, all the way from California to deep South Texas, Brownsville, and the Gulf of Mexico, they're in charge of where the boundary lies, water resources, flooding, environmental issues, and things of that kind. When Carlos Marin was a deputy commissioner under Commissioner Arturo Duran, they both came to the Rio Grande Valley because after Hurricane Emily, and what Emily had done over Mexico was deposit a lot of water in the Rio San Juan, which was coming down toward Brownsville. And we wanted good video, of course. We wanted to be on whatever transportation that they might have had. But the Border Patrol did not permit us to fly. So Deputy Commissioner Marin took our camera, and the video you're seeing on the screen is the flooding that he actually took. And you'll see it now, Dr. Joe and Joe there, and starting with Ansel Duas and the flooding Rio Grande coming all the way from Ansel Duas all the way down to the city of Brownsville. and you could see what they were going to see, Dr. Joe and Joe Tucker, as they were going down into Mexico proper to see what kind of flooding was happening in the interior of Mexico, because they knew that the floodwaters that they were seeing in the interior of Mexico around Ojinaga was going to ultimately get to the Rio Grande River and cause whatever plight that it was going to cause there at Presidio and Presidio County. So this is what they were flying to see. They were in a Border Patrol helicopter, because I personally called and made a contact with the Border Patrol in the area, and they permitted Commissioner Duran and Deputy Commissioner at that time, Carlos Marin, to be permitted to fly on this U.S. government property, a Border Patrol helicopter, to see the floodwaters of Hurricane Emily. Why couldn't they have the use of Border Patrol helicopters all the way from Brownsville to Southern California? Because they aren't commissioners. They are going to have to see flooding conditions. And if we have that equipment owned by the U.S. government, why couldn't they have use of it? Makes sense to me. What do you guys think?
Well, it'd probably be real handy for them.
It was in the case of the Border Patrol helicopter, Dr. Joe, because they were able to stop, slow down, get down over the dams and see what was going on. If there was a levee breaking, they have that capability, where the fixed wing aircraft they were flying into Mexico, it's a little difficult being a private pilot.
There's an answer to that question that fits a whole lot of events. It's called bureaucratic tangles. And that's, I don't know if that's the right answer or not, but it probably will fit.
So when the Commissioner Duran and the Deputy Commissioner Marine said we can't get a fixed wing aircraft, I picked up the phone and called the Border Patrol chief, and she said, sure, what time you need it and we'll have it over there. And they flew. And luckily, Carlos took my camera and took the video that you saw on the screen just a moment ago. An important agency, the man, Carlos Marine in particular, was appointed by the President of the United States, and we cannot see as a government that we need to provide better, safer equipment for these gentlemen in the future to do their job. So what do we need to do to make sure this is discussed in the future, guys? This is an important agency to South Texas, Texas, and the nation all the way to California.
I don't know whether the Boundary Commission has even approached the Border Patrol with such a request, but it would be something that they could take up and talk about, I think, at least.
Well, there's a bond, a working bond between IBWC and the Border Patrol that hasn't been discussed, but it needs to be. The levee system between here and Hidalgo. You can drive up the military highway most any time of the day or night. You'll see Border Patrol vehicles on that levee. So there needs to be some kind of a communication. Look, if you're going to use our levees for traffic, observing illegal aliens coming over, then how about us using your airplanes when we want to take a look at the river?
Well, in the past, they have had an aircraft, a twin-engine plane, did crash with a commissioner on board, but again, it was a drug aircraft that had been seized. They had to charter their own pilot. They had to hire a charter pilot to fly even out into the seized aircraft.
Yeah, well, the first thing they'd have to do, because the IBWC is a part of the State Department, they'd have to justify it in their budget request that they needed an airplane and needed the funding to operate it. So there's a lot of ways this thing could kind of drift off course, and as a consequence, this tragedy happened.
Now, Joe, you talk about the fact that in Ansel Lewis Dam in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas, there is a room where people and representatives of both countries work every day. How does this work on a daily basis?
That's at Ansel Lewis Dam. In the center pier, up on the third floor, is the control room where all the operations are made. And you have round the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's a U.S. operator and a Mexican operator sitting back to back. The international boundary runs right down the center of the room, the control room. To get up to it from the dam, you're back and forth into the U.S. and Mexico. You cross that boundary several times. It's a unique situation, and to my knowledge, it does not exist anywhere else in the world. It has been that way since, about 1958, I think, when the dam first became operational, and has worked beautifully.
Well, Dr. Joe, people don't remember that and recall that the IBWC really is, in fact, an independent federal commission. An independent federal commission, basically a third party that had been created by both the President of the United States and, in Mexico's case, the Department of State, coming together, work together on a daily basis. Isn't that good, and isn't that a wonderful thing to honor as it relates to the friendship of these two nations?
Oh, sure. It's unfortunate that the bond that occurs and the efforts that are put forth on both sides to resolve issues like flooding, like levees, we're able to do those things quietly and efficiently. There's other issues that crop up that are unilateral. To give you an example, the border wall. And don't get me started on that. But that laid on Carlos Marin's doorstep. You've got to give us a place to put this wall, but meanwhile you can't violate the treaty we have with Mexico, and we have to have our levee system improved. And so Carlos had a full wagon to pull, and he was still smiling.
And we're now showing you on the screen a picture of Commissioner Carlos Marin signing one of the documents related to that particular project, along with the Hidalgo County Judge, J.D. Salinas, and Henry Cuellar, who is a congressman for McAllen and Laredo. We called the IBWC to find out what particular project was one of the projects that was one of the proudest items of the career of Commissioner Carlos Marin, and we were told it was the Nuevo Laredo International Wastewater Treatment Plant. What a lot of people don't understand is the fact that there is treatment of wastewater, sewage, going on in Mexico, in Nogales, in Laredo, in particular, because Nuevo Laredo used to put raw sewage right into the water of the Rio Grande. And Carlos Marin actually was in charge of this project from 1989 for a 7-year period till it was finally completed. It was a $60 million project. $37 million came from the Mexican government, $20 million from U.S. Treasury, and $2 million from the state treasury of the state of Texas. It was done to improve the quality of waters of the Rio Grande at Laredo, Texas, and Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas. And one of the things in particular of note is when I gave my camera to Deputy Commissioner Carlos Marin, in the video taken on my camera that he was using on that Border Patrol helicopter, was some of the effluent coming out of Reynosa actually flowing into the Rio Grande and then working its way all the way down through all the pumping plants from below Reynosa all the way to Brownsville, Dr. Joe Coulter. So he was concerned about that region also having the same situation of raw effluent going into the Rio Grande that he had solved as Deputy Commissioner in Nuevo Laredo, Texas. And had he continued to survive, I'm sure he would have gone forward and tried to do something about this problem that exists to this day in South Texas. We want to give and pass along our condolences to the family members of all 4 people who died on this aircraft. If you want to do the same, Joe and Dr. Joe, in 10 seconds, go ahead and do so as we wrap up our program here
Well,
today.
sure. We, the Water Committee, sent a floral arrangement to the funeral and a message expressing our regret at the tragedy that happened and are expressing our admiration for Carlos as a friend and a competent professional.
Yes, we made a charity donation on his behalf, and I intend to write the family a letter expressing my sympathy and thoughts.
And likewise, the same goes forward to the families of all 4 people who perished on that aircraft, in particular Carlos Marin, who has appeared, as you saw, on this program several times over the past few years. Thank you for joining us. Till next time, adios.